Hello, welcome everybody again to the Footy Accumulators Betting Show. I'm Will Perry, joined by the former Celtic, Aston Villa and Bayern Munich striker Alan McInally and James Vickers, our betting expert. We are up and running, boys. How does it feel to be back? Bundesliga, 27 goals in the 9 games over the weekend. We're going to discuss all the action from match day 26. We'll look ahead to the weekend's games as well. Alan and James are going to go head-to-head in the NAP Challenge. Our match in focus this week is Wolfsburg against Borussia Dortmund, and we're going to have a crack at a successful Acca this time after Cologne let us down. Who picked them? Come on.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. Well, wait, 2-0 up. I'd forgotten all about it. I was like, well, that's in the bag. We're just waiting Leverkusen on Monday night.
We'll let you off because I think I wanted to go with Leipzig at home to Freiburg, and you said you wouldn't touch that with the barge pole, and you were quite right.
Yeah.
What did we go, James? I think we ended up going. We went Dortmund, Bayern, Leverkusen, and Cologne. We got 9-2 for that, but as Alan said, Cologne, who were 2-0 up against Mainz, ended up drawing 2-2.
Yeah, very surprised with that. Been really good at home, especially since October, November time. They really started to turn a corner, and then more so into the second half of the season before the pause. So, yeah, like you said, when they were 2-0 up, that one was done and dusted in my book, and sitting waiting for the Leverkusen game.
Alan, first action then in Germany for a good 9 weeks or so. What did you make of it all?
I loved it. It was, I suppose, once you got over the fact that you could hear the lads all shouting at each other on some of the directions from the coaching and stuff, I really enjoyed it. It looks as though the guys pretty much got into it pretty quickly. There was a couple. There was the game on Sunday. Who was the game on Sunday? I thought this has started like a training game. It was actually it wasn't the Bayern game. Can't remember. It might have been the what was the other Sunday game? Can't remember what it was. Was it Frankfurt? It doesn't matter. And I thought this is too much like a training game. You know, the too many passes, too many of just like that. But then as the first challenge went in and the first couple of free kicks, I think everything got pretty real pretty quickly, and I think they've done a brilliant job, Germany. I really do.
It was your game. It was Cologne Mainz, the one that let us down. That was the other Sunday game.
That's what it was. Yeah, sorry. And I thought of course they scored pretty rapid as well. But it just at the beginning, I was like, oh, this is a bit false. But it really did turn into a decent game, and I'm delighted that everything seemed to have gone okay. You know, spread over the 3 days, and it looks as though all the testing, etc., has been good because I haven't heard any fallout from it. So fingers crossed, we go forward.
James, have you seen anything then over the weekend to suggest that Bayern Munich aren't going to cruise towards another title?
Yeah, I think Bayern were really worth their victory over Union. You know, we expected it. We sort of backed Bayern in the show that we did last week. I think it'd take a brave man to bet against them at the moment with the way they're playing, the strength and depth they've got. Mikel Cuisance came back for them at the weekend as well, who's missed a large portion of this season. So it just highlights their strength in depth. I think challengers, Dortmund look very good, who we'll get onto in a bit. Leipzig stuttered a little bit, but then just below Leipzig, Gladbach and Leverkusen I thought were fantastic. Leverkusen had quite an easy run of it against a really poor Bremen side, but you can only beat what's in front of you, and I think that'll fill them with confidence coming into the run-in now.
And Alan, from one striker to another, Robert Lewandowski on the score sheet again, top scorer in the Bundesliga, 26 goals, but his 40th goal in 34 Bayern games this season. He is a ridiculous man.
Those, you know, when we're talking about the stats when we start talking about Robert, it's a kind of Ronaldo-Messi scenario, because we only really speak about the huge number of goals to the games that people play. I only really remember thinking about Messi and Ronaldo, but when you look at Robert Lewandowski's record, it is astoundingly good. And incidentally, his Champions League record is not too bad either. And James is right; they look pretty imperious. But I think the Gladbach, psychologically for Gladbach, that was a huge result for them. And I did think that Dortmund had a pretty facile win. But Bayern are still going to have to keep the engine just in and around fourth gear. And just if they've got a fifth, they might just need it, because there's a game coming up in, midweek next week, that might just tell us how much Dortmund are betting in the Bayern machine.
Yeah, Tuesday the 26th. Not much rest, actually, because they both play on the Saturday as well, don't they? So here are the results then from match day 26 in the Bundesliga. Wins for Dortmund, Wolfsburg, Hertha Berlin and Mönchengladbach on the Saturday. It finished all square in the games between Fortuna Düsseldorf and Paderborn, and Leipzig and Freiburg. Bayern beat Union Berlin on Sunday. As we mentioned, Cologne Mainz finished in a draw, and Bayer Leverkusen thumped struggling Werder Bremen on Monday night. So this is how the Bundesliga table looks. No change to the top five. Leipzig, the only side dropping points. Bayern still with a 4-point lead, guys. The title competition goes all the way down then, doesn't it, to Leverkusen, in theory, in 5th place. And at the other end, Fortuna Düsseldorf remain in the relegation playoff place, with Werder Bremen and Paderborn making up the bottom 2. A reminder that if you're looking for additional stats and trends ahead of the Bundesliga this weekend, make sure that you download the Footy Accumulators Betting Hub app. Give the smart Acca function a try. And remember that you've got to be 18 plus to bet, and please gamble responsibly. So, guys, we are 0 from 1 in the Accas. Hopefully going to put that right this week. And James leads Alan in the NAP challenge. This is where player and Punter go up against each other with a bet that they fancy. Alan with his head in his hands in week 1. James, you picked Leverkusen to beat Werder Bremen. I think you got 3-4 and a comfortable 4-1 win for Leverkusen.
Yeah, I did fancy them going into the weekend. I think for the away sides at the weekend especially, they were the one that I fancied the most. Peter Bosch's got them playing some fantastic football this season. Kai Havertz started off slowly, as I mentioned last week, but you just have to look at what he did on Monday night against Bremen. Ran the show. Never really got out of sort of second or third gear in the game. 2 fantastic headers, which people don't really associate with him. They think of him more as a ball-playing sort of number 9 in that similar ilk to Bobby Firmino at Liverpool. But just goes to show what an all-round player he is, and it's frightening to think he's still only 20 years old. So, yeah, hard to look past Leverkusen. I'll get into it sort of shortly there, who I'm going to go for this week as well with another bet, and hopefully take a 2-0 lead over Alan going into the...
Alan, do you know what's fascinating though, isn't it, the way the media works, and we include ourselves in that. But, you know, Kai Havertz has been linked with absolutely everybody, and especially after that weekend, because I remember before the break, before football was suspended on the 13th of March, he was being talked about, touted around with all the big teams in Europe. And again, after the weekend, Liverpool apparently interested, and German legends saying that he shouldn't go to England, that he should stay in Germany in time for Dortmund. Yeah. But I mean, as James says, 20 years old, 6'2", probably still growing. Yeah. He's got everything, isn't he?
Well, he certainly looked pretty good. Anything that came into the box, I don't think he ever lost a header. I will say something, incidentally. I thought that Werder Bremen were very, very poor. It made it another pretty easy win for Leverkusen, but they were just simply far too good. They had a young winger as well. Wasn't there a young lad, James? Is it Visa?
Yeah, Visa. I think who's debutant in Bundesliga history. Yeah,
so it just shows you the kind of depth that Leverkusen have, with some very, very good young players in their team. I think was it Michael Ballack that said he wanted them to continue or something, you know. So it certainly looks as though he knows where the back of the net is, and boy, what a career he's got in front of him for sure. And I would imagine if he does stay another year, he'll probably have his pick of teams to go to. But and you know who's going to be into this, then, for sure.
We showed the table at the beginning of the show, but, you know, 8 points off Bayern Munich. They're still in the mix, guys, aren't they, in theory?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially with the game coming next week, Dortmund and Bayern, I think Leverkusen will be looking at that, hoping ideally for a draw, claw points back on both of them. But if they were to cheer a side on to actually go on and win, I think they'd be choosing Dortmund. Julian Brandt, ex-Leverkusen boy as well, hopefully can play a part in that for them. And if Dortmund can peg back Bayern, that, you know, opens the door then for the likes of Leverkusen, Leipzig and Gladbach, as you mentioned, Will, to really make it a 5-horse race for the title.
Well, so Alan, sorry, Will, to interrupt.
Go for it.
It's a huge game at the weekend, actually. Huge game to go to Borussia Mönchengladbach by Leverkusen. So we'll just see after the euphoric result for Leverkusen and everybody talking about Kai Havertz, etc., that they can go to Borussia Mönchengladbach and try and turn them over. That will not be easy. And of course, with Gladbach only 6 points behind Bayern now, they've got their eyes set on them at the top as well. So I'm really looking forward to that game at the weekend, actually.
Just to rub your nose in it, and again, then, you know, the result that put you 1-0 down in the NAP challenge, Alan, was that Cologne-Mainz game. It was an ambitious one, wasn't it? But I mean, you were unlucky. To be fair, they were 2-0 up Cologne, and it finished 2-2.
I kind of went with the price a little bit, and the fact that it was in. I don't know whether they're going 2-0 up, actually, with no one in the stadium, and it was maybe easier for Mainz to kind of come back just because of no atmosphere, kind of thing. But they should have really seen it out, Cologne. I thought they would have had plenty. When I was speaking about them last week, I was pretty confident. Mainz haven't been particularly fantastic, and I thought it was an opportunity for them. And we're going to speak about another team that is my nap this week, but the results certainly went for them. And So I don't think Köln did themselves any favours whatsoever. It's a poor result after looking absolutely cruising at 2-0.
So these are the games you got to pick from this weekend. All gets going on Friday night, the Berlin derby in the capital, Hertha against Union. Then on Saturday, Mönchengladbach, Leverkusen, again, we just mentioned a minute ago. Paderborn, bottom side, up against Hoffenheim. Freiburg, Werder Bremen. Wolfsburg taking on second place Dortmund, with the leaders Bayern Munich looking for another Bundesliga title at home on Saturday against Eintracht Frankfurt. And then on Sunday, Schalke, Augsburg, Mainz against Leipzig, and Cologne against Fortuna Düsseldorf, who, as we said, are in that relegation playoff place. So James, as you went 1-0 up, we'll let you go first on this one. Who are you going for?
Yeah, so I've gone with Bayern Munich on a -1 handicap to beat Eintracht Frankfurt, which gives you odds of 2 to 5. Looking at the form, Bayern seem to do well against Frankfurt at the Allianz Arena. The last 3 results there, 3-0, 4-1 and 5-1 to Bayern Munich. So with the way they played against Union, another game under their belt, players getting back to that match sharpness, I think, you can't really look past Bayern Munich beating Frankfurt at the weekend. Frankfurt, bit poor, I have to say, against Gladbach. I did expect more from them. Me and Alan were talking sort of after the show last week, and we expected Frankfurt to give them more of a game and thought it would be closer. So I think with the way Frankfurt are playing, Bayern going from strength to strength, I've gone with Bayern Munich on a -1 handicap for my nap this week.
Talking after the show, is this some sort of Zoom beer that I've missed out on? That I've not been invited to?
No. It was champagne James was drinking. Already,
Mr. McInally.
Yeah.
What are you going for?
I'm going to go. Well, I actually went against them for the simple reason I thought that my old teammate Bruno Labbadia, I thought it'd be a tough one for them. It's not been an easy place to go. There's a lot expected of Hertha Berlin, and they had an absolute peach of a result, 3-0 at Hoffenheim, and everything went for them. The boy Cunha scored. That they got in from, was it Leipzig in the winter as well, and it was just a dream start for Bruno. It really was. And reading some of the comments afterwards, everything just seemed to go perfectly well. Now they've obviously got a huge game on Friday night. It's in Berlin. Obviously they play Union, and I think the fact that the game is in Hertha, or at Hertha Berlin rather, I think they'll just be too strong. I think psychologically it's a massive result for them. I thought Union had a couple of half chances against Bayern, to be fair, but it's maybe hard to think how strong they are against a team like Bayern Munich. But I just do not see Hertha letting up, and I think it's a great carrot for them. And all the results went for them, with the Union getting beat, Frankfurt getting beat, Augsburg got beat, and Cologne above them obviously only got a point against Mainz. So of all the switching and the leads, etc., it was a brilliant day for Hertha Berlin, and I expect them to carry that on Friday. 5-4, incidentally, they are 5-4, I think.
5-4, okay. Yeah, so Alan going for Hertha Berlin in the Berlin derby on Friday night, which should be a brilliant one to watch, and James going for the leaders, Bayern Munich. We'll see what happens in that one next week. In terms of our match in focus then, guys, this week, we could have gone, couldn't we, for the Berlin derby, or we could have gone for third against fifth in Mönchengladbach against Leverkusen, but we've decided to focus this week on Wolfsburg against Dortmund. James, why have we picked this one?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fascinating game. Dortmund always do well at Wolfsburg in terms of keeping the title race alive. They need to go there and get a win. It's a place that they have done well at in recent seasons. I think they've won 5 of the last 6 against Wolfsburg. The only one that they didn't win was a 0-0 draw. And you have to go back to, I think it's September 2016 for the last time Wolfsburg took anything off Dortmund in terms of a victory in the league, with Daniel Didavi scoring the decisive goal in that game. So promises to be a huge game in terms of the title. That could open the door then for the likes of, as we mentioned, Leverkusen, Gladbach and Leipzig as well, which will be another massive game. Wolfsburg, all to play for, occupying that last Europa League spot at the moment with, I believe it's Freiburg, Hoffenheim and Schalke breathing down their necks as well. So in terms of European places, while it may not be a straight title shootout this game, it has massive implications for probably 5 or 6 teams around these two. So a game that a lot of eyes will be on, and I think it will deliver.
In terms of a club, Alan, Wolfsburg, I mean, huge. I mean, the Volkswagen Arena was slightly after your time, wasn't it? But what a following, what a noise when those fans are actually allowed inside that stadium.
Oh, absolutely. And I can remember when Wolfgang Wolf was the manager of Wolfsburg back in the day. It must have been that would have been the 94, 95, 96 or something like that. They have a great following. It's a good place. Not anything like a massive stadium or anything, but it's a big game. If anything, listen, they didn't let anybody down at the weekend. They've gone to was it Augsburg, they beat them. They won 2-1, albeit they left it very, very late indeed. And this is a different kettle of fish. I just think, as much as the game being in Wolfsburg, maybe, just maybe, the fact the crowd's not there won't suit them. You know, they would have preferred that kind of fervour behind them against a team like Borussia Dortmund, who I did think looked very, very good indeed. They look as though, and I know they got 4 goals, but they could probably have got 6 or 7. And I think Wolfsburg will do well to stop them scoring at least a couple of times. But it'll be a great game. We're quite right to focus on that particularly. And Wolfsburg, I think James is dead right. You know, sitting in 6th, but you've got the likes of certainly Schalke, who have a home game coming up in Freiburg, who I still think are just an outsider, maybe they can sneak in above Wolfsburg into that 6th place.
Hot on their heels, aren't they? Those two teams that you mentioned, Alan, certainly in terms of the Europa League spots, and Dortmund actually unbeaten against Wolfsburg in their last 9 meetings. Only Bayern Munich, James, interestingly, have scored more than Dortmund 72 in the league this season. But if you are going to ask any questions of Dortmund, and it's hard to do so after that first performance back since the suspension, perhaps the defence a little bit leaky. They conceded the most, haven't they, in terms of the top 6 sides in the Bundesliga?
Yeah, that's always been the question, really, with Dortmund for the last 6 or 7 years since Jurgen Klopp's left, really. They have been a bit shaky at the back. We said last week Dan Axel Zagadou is going to be a massive loss for them between now and the end of the season. You know, they have the likes of Hummels, who they brought in from Bayern Munich in the summer, but there are question marks. Berkey, great shot stopper on his day, but he's known to produce an error. Manuel Akanji, the same, good centre-back, but is he really at the level needed to be challenging Bayern Munich? So definitely question marks around the defence. I think what will be key for Dortmund over the next couple of weeks is getting Emre Can and Axel Witsel back to full fitness as soon as possible. I don't think that they'll risk them this weekend against Wolfsburg with that massive game against Bayern Munich coming up next Tuesday. Thomas Delaney did well at the weekend against Schalke. Schalke didn't really do too much to turn that midfield battle into a war, which I thought they would do. So it was a relatively easy afternoon for Thomas Delaney. But as you said, still question marks over Dortmund. And I think with Wout Weghorst back for Wolfsburg, they will pose more of a threat than Schalke did last weekend.
Alan, what do you think then in terms of key players from both teams? Obviously, we'll start with the Dortmund players, the likes of Haaland, Sancho, Hazard, Brandt, Guerrero, who were all brilliant, weren't they, at the weekend? Yeah. But as James mentioned, only 2.5 days rest in theory once that full-time whistle goes until that huge game against Bayern. Then we'll definitely have eyes on that.
Sorry, Will. Yeah, I know you're spot on, buddy. And they will have to obviously think about a kind of squad rotation. The only thing is, I can't see Lucien Favre and the players really thinking, hang on a minute, I'm going to rotate it that much, because I thought they were so dominant, they were so good. And unless somebody's picked up a little injury, I think you might just go with the same starting 11. They don't have Witsel and Can, you're absolutely right. And Hummels and Piszczek and Akanji, etc. looked okay. I just think the likes of, you mentioned them, the boy Haaland, he said, what did he said, yeah, I thought I would score. What a great attitude that is. I mean, it's just... he probably, I was going to say he's going to go and buy a loaf of bread and he sees himself scoring, but for strikers, that's exactly what happens all the time. The boy Julian Brandt played really well. He's a good player. But I do, and on the other side of things, I know James is going to get to, I think Weghorst is a big plus, is a big plus for Wolfsburg. Not being available at the weekend, even though they did win the game, this is different completely. But like I say, I think to try and keep, there's more positives towards Dortmund than there is for Wolfsburg. Weghorst, I suppose you can say, well, he had an extra 5 days on the break, and he'll be bursting to get back again. The fact of the game, there'll be questions for me to ask for Dortmund. It's all right playing in your own stadium, and I do think psychologically they've had time to prepare, knowing that there's not going to be anybody watching you. But this is a bit of a question mark for Dortmund for me. I do think they'll probably step up to the plate and win this, but I'd like to see if they've got any European ambitions, Wolfsburg, then this is where you need to show it for sure.
Yeah. In terms of the odds then, guys, what do we think about some of these? Dortmund 3-4 for the win, with Wolfsburg 10-3. And then in terms of, let's start with some of those Dortmund players for first goal scorer. Erling Haaland, or Haaland as we're supposed to call him now, apparently, aren't we? 13 goals in 12 games since arriving in the Bundesliga, which is astonishing stats really for someone so young. He's 3-1 first scorer, 8-11 anytime. Sancho was on the bench at the weekend. Could he start? 9-2, 6-5 anytime. I'll give you a couple more. Hazard 13-2, 15-8 anytime. Brandt 8-1, 9-4 anytime. First goal scorer, James. Who tickles your fancy in that one?
Yeah, it's hard to look past Erling Haaland, as you mentioned. Fantastic since he's come into the Bundesliga, 12 in 13 games. I was lucky enough to be at Signal Iduna for his home debut against Cologne back in January. Came off the bench in that game and scored 2 and could easily have had a hat-trick, which went sort of with the week before where he got a hat-trick off the bench against Augsburg as well in his debut. So born to score goals, like Alan obviously mentioned. Just confidence is flowing at the moment. And in terms of opening the scoring, I don't think you can look too far past Erling Haaland. As you mentioned, I think the way he's transformed that Dortmund attacking line, which sounds silly to say considering the amount of talent that they have in and around him with the likes of Jadon Sancho, Marco Reus, Julian Brandt, the way he's come in and transformed that, a striker that they haven't really had since Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang left to go to Arsenal. Paco Alcacer came in and did all right, but was never really that player who could go and string 6 or 7 games together without being injured. So Haaland has done fantastically well since he came in. And in terms of first goal scorers, to go back to your question, well, I just can't see past him at the moment.
Yeah. Alan, would we call him a traditional number 9, Haaland?
Is there such a thing now? Yeah, probably. Because, he gets in the box. I think the goal that he scored is a great number 9's goal, because you get in between defenders or you get in front of defender. And there's a big thing about Dortmund that James was talking about there, about how he looks so he's helping certainly Dortmund look as though they're a team. They're happy to get the ball into the box because they know he'll be there. They don't like taking extra touch and cut back and try and play, etc., and wait for the perfect time to get in. The ball's played in really early because they know he's heading towards the goal, and his goal was just sublime. Great touch, composure as well, and no chance for the goalkeeper. The boy Guerrero get 2 goals. I mean, I'd be all over him. I know that Haaland probably to score at any time is a great bet, but I would go Guerrero. I thought he looks, after 2 at the weekend, there's nothing better than bursting out to try and wait for the next game to make sure you get on the score sheet again. But they'll be difficult to hold back Dortmund for sure.
Do you know what? That's a great shout, Guerrero, because that is a great price as well. To me, it looks like Dortmund first goal scorer, Guerrero 8-1, 9-4 any time, especially after those 2 goals. 8-1 first scorer odds. I fancy that one, eh? Let's have a few quid on that. Just go back to Haaland quickly, Alan, because the reason I asked about the number 9 question is, we look at him, and the thing that surprises me about him, the fact that amazingly he's still 19, but he's 6'4", again still growing. The pace that he's got, so quick for someone so tall, and over the weekend all these comparisons were made with number 9s of years gone past, and Robert Lewandowski. Yeah. People saying Robert Lewandowski is the greatest number 9 perhaps of our generation. Haaland has got a chance to overtake him, hasn't he? Bearing in mind he's probably got another 20 years left in him.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else. It's not as if he's a pushover, as in literally a pushover. When he's holding the ball up, he's a strong, strong boy. Doesn't matter. It looks as though he can play with his back to goal to bring other players in, or he can obviously face the goal, and as the ball's coming in, he knows how to put it there. Yeah, and 19 years old at 6'4". Well, if he gets to 6'5", he might just be literally unstoppable, seriously, because he seems to have done everything so far. James is right. He debuts a hat-trick, then he scores 2 goals, he scores, what did they get? They get a hat-trick in the Champions League, or they get 4 in the Champions League or something, and everybody's like, who is this, by the way?
Yeah.
And he is going so much in the right direction, and Dortmund will have to be careful. They'll have to treat him with kid gloves. Are brilliant that they managed to actually get him to come to Dortmund, but at the moment in time, it's like, go and do your stuff and get the ball in the box for him, because he knows exactly how to put the ball in the back of the net. He's a fantastic young player, and if you think right now of a 19-year-old that's better than Haaland, that's putting the ball in the back of the net, I genuinely can't think of one, and that's why he sticks out so much. Yeah,
incredible player. We shouldn't look past Wolfsburg as well. First scorer odds for them. Did we say that Weghorst is not playing, or is playing? I can't remember.
He will be playing, James, won't he?
Yeah, he had a 1-game suspension. I believe it was for yellow cards amassed, so missed the first game back, so we'll be raring to go for this one.
Okay, we can get good odds on him as well for first scorer, 6-1 for Weghorst. Renato Stefan, 12-1, 15-4 anytime. Ginczek, 9-1, 15-5 anytime. And Bracalo, 11-1, 10-3 anytime. Just finally then on that game, quick prediction, Alan, James. Alan?
I'll go Wolfsburg 1, Borussia Dortmund 3.
James?
Alan's took the words right out of my mouth there on my note. 3-1, so, yeah, I've got to say the same, 3-1.
Well, I've only gone. Sorry, James. You know better. I was a little disappointed in Schalke. They didn't actually manage to score against Dortmund. Obviously, the game finishing 4-0, and I'm presuming with Weghorst and the team that Wolfsburg might just get one. Were you disappointed a little bit in Schalke?
Yeah, especially when I saw the team news as well. Without that sort of spine, as I mentioned, of Witsel and Chan, I thought Schalke would really do more to overpower that midfield and then test out the likes of Akanji, who has an error in him, Pijek and Hummels, who aren't the quickest. So, yeah, I was really disappointed with Schalke. I thought they would have given it more of a go. And I think Wolfsburg, with the way they play, Brekalo, Weghorst up front, they are direct players who I think, yeah, they will pose more problems for that Dortmund backline. And been at Wolfsburg as well. That's why I've got them down to score at least one.
Perfect.
Yeah, so a really good game to look forward to there over the weekend in Wolfsburg against second place Dortmund in the Bundesliga. And that moves us on, gentlemen, to our Acca challenge this week. Just a reminder that last week, sorry, Alan, Dortmund, Bayern, Leverkusen and Cologne. We went for Cologne, let us down. We could have got 9-2 for that one. So this week, I'll kick us off. I quite fancy, because I didn't want to go with... I was a bit uneasy about Dortmund, but anyway, I just like the look of Freiburg at home to Werder Bremen. And I say I like the look of Freiburg. It's probably more that I don't like the look of Werder Bremen, having watched that game on Monday night. I quite fancy myself in that back line, Alan, and I'm 6 foot with my Cuban heels on.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, listen, I did say let's just tread lightly with the Leipzig thing, although to be fair, they probably have chances to win the game. I don't know why I like Freiburg. I just think they've got players in the team that are half decent. And I think you're right. I mean, if you looked at all the games genuinely and picked a team that looked so not disorganised but so lackadaisical in defence, as though it was almost as though they didn't smell any danger, that you would need to look directly at Werder Bremen. And when I looked and saw Freiburg were 5-4, I thought that's a way too big price. So I'm kind of delighted you've actually gone for them, Will, because they need something particularly special. Werder Bremen, I think, if they're going to get anything out of the game.
Yeah, just looking down here, James, before we come to you on the odds on that one. So Freiburg 5-4 for the win at home against Werder Bremen, 13-5 the draw, 2-1 the win, the away win for Bremen. What are you thinking, James?
Yeah, so I was going to go Freiburg initially, but obviously you guys have mentioned that. I thought Bremen were just very poor on Monday night. So with mine, I've gone Borussia Dortmund. I think, as I mentioned before, Dortmund, do very well against Wolfsburg, a team that they tend to put goals past as well. So with that game coming up against Bayern, I think, they'll be even more desperate to win that game, more so than they would normally, just to close that gap, potentially to a point if Bayern slip up at the weekend. So Dortmund for me is my selection.
So I've gone Dortmund. I've gone Freiburg. You've gone Dortmund. Alan, what are you saying?
I'm going to stick with Bruno Labbadia's Hertha Berlin. It was a wonderful away result. I think it will be a hotly contested derby, as you would imagine. I thought that Union did okay against Bayern, genuinely did. But I think coming off that result, and if Bruno can just keep everything a little light in training and just concentrate, because all the vibes I'm hearing out of Hertha Berlin is that they like the training, they like the manager's aggressive attitude to scoring goals, to going forward. And if they do that, I think they'll have too much for Union. So I'll go Hertha Berlin 5-4 for me.
Oh, do you know what? Such a shame, isn't it? We can't have fans inside the stadium for that one, because what an atmosphere that would be in the German capital. And they're right on top of each other, aren't they, in terms of where they are in the Bundesliga table. So we've got Dortmund, we've got Freiburg, we've got Hertha Berlin. We need a fourth. Are we going to agree on the leaders, Bayern Munich against Frankfurt? What are we thinking? I'm
going to let you two go for this, because I'm still smarting from Köln, doing us out of a few quid, actually. So you two can pick for sure.
Go on, James. You know far more than me about the Bundesliga. I mean, if I was looking at it just from the outside, I'd quite fancy for our fourth one, Bayern at home to Frankfurt. What do you reckon? Anything else?
Yeah, I'd definitely go with Bayern against Frankfurt. Looking down sort of the list of fixtures this weekend, there's a few that I'd definitely stay clear from. The Gladbach-Leverkusen game especially. It's so hard to call that one. Paderborn against Hoffenheim as well, another one I'd stay clear from. So I think the safe money is with Bayern Munich. I think they will run out comfortable winners against Eintracht. Potentially Leipzig away at Mainz, but with the way Leipzig didn't really kick on as I thought they would do against Freiburg at the weekend. I'd be looking to stay clear of Leipzig, potentially for the time being, see if they can get back to winning ways. So definitely, I think safe money is going with Bayern.
Would you two not be tempted by 5-6 Schalke back at home against Augsburg?
It did cross my mind. I think the only thing that put me off that one was just sort of how toothless Schalke looked in attack against Dortmund. Back at the Veltins, though, do very well there. Whether or not that'll continue without fans, remains to be seen. But I think Augsburg had a decent performance against Wolfsburg, better than I thought they would do. I think they're getting 1 or 2 players back towards full fitness as well now. So I think erring on the side of caution. I don't want to be the one who derails the Acca, so I'm going to stay. And
by the way, is the Acca with Bayern on a handicap or just a straight Bayern win?
Looking at it, in my nap, as I said, Bayern with a handicap of -1. The last 3 results there: 3-0, 4-1, and 5-1. Frankfurt do well against Bayern, but only if it's at Frankfurt. At Bayern, it seems to be a different story. So I think Bayern with a handicap of 1 or 2 goals, is pretty sensible, to be honest. But
all the pressure's on you, Will, to pick that.
Do you know what? Well, if we put that in the calculator, what we've come up with, I think we're looking at like 9-10 to 1 there.
Ooh.
So what we having 50 quid on that?
Yeah, I'll put it on, and it's for Christmas 2024.
That's not a charity. That's our Christmas party.
If we ever get out again.
Hey, do you know what? Just on the subject of Augsburg, I didn't realise that Jens Lehmann is the Augsburg assistant coach. I was watching something the other day, and they were going through his old shirts. And I mean, what a career he had! What a player he was in not only Germany, all across the world, and of course on the international stage. But you must have come up across him against him, Alan. Early days in Germany.
Yeah, absolutely, I did. He's obviously well respected guy. And was a fabulous servant. There's a lot of very high-profile German players eventually end up in the presidium, as they would call it, which is either the board or as a football director, etc., etc., etc. And he's certainly one of them. He won't be happy with the start, obviously getting beat by Wolfsburg, and they'll expect something a little more. Who is it? They go to Schalke, isn't it? So that's another tough game for him. But that's. Probably, I know you'll probably know this better than I, James, a little bit. It's really, they're not in danger of going down, but to certainly have a respectable midfield slot would be a good position for Augsburg, considering, there's a lot of people, when we speak about German football, would say, are Augsburg a Bundesliga football team? A lot of people wouldn't even know that.
Yeah, they've been in that for the last few seasons, that real sort of mid-tableness where they're a little bit too good to go down, but not quite good enough yet to get into the European places. So, I think looking at the teams below, and we mentioned Bremen and Paderborn, who I think it's safe to say that they probably have left themselves too much to do now. So I don't think Augsburg will go down, barring an absolute disaster of not winning any games between now and the end of the season. But yeah, you're quite right, Alan. I think they are in that mid-table sort of pocket, and it's up to the likes of Jens Lehmann and the rest of the squad and backroom staff to try and kick them onto that next level now.
You know what? He told a great story as well, because he was saying, I didn't realise, when he left Schalke and joined AC Milan, who at the time, they were European champions, weren't they, when he went to AC in 98, 99. Didn't get in the team, was on the bench. He was actually offered originally to go to Real Madrid, but he chose AC Milan and said it was the biggest mistake of his career. Then came back to Germany and joined Borussia Dortmund, which apparently didn't go down as well, because the last game he played for Schalke, he scored against Dortmund. Jens Lehmann.
Header, equaliser winner, without going back and checking. I remember seeing clips. It was a little bit before my time, but header right in front of the Dortmund fans.
I do remember. I'm saying I do remember that, Will, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not sure if I'm right here. I'm sure when he'd signed for Dortmund, he was actually a member of the Schalke fan club or something.
Yeah,
I think it was something like that, and obviously that went down like a lead balloon as well, obviously. And of course, even with it, Heiko Herrlich couldn't even go to the game, could he?
Yeah.
The manager of Wolfsburg, because he left the hotel, went to buy toothpaste, got caught, and that wasn't self-isolating. So things can only get better for Wolfsburg for sure.
Right, gents, let's see. Hopefully things can get better for our Acca this week. Great to speak to you. Just a reminder, everyone watching, listening, that if you're looking for an additional stat and trend pack ahead of the weekend with the Bundesliga back for its second week since the suspension. Make sure you download the Footy Accumulators Betting Hub app. Give the smart Acca function a try, and remember that you've got to be 18 plus to bet. And please gamble responsibly. Guys, have a great week. So many good games to look forward to next week as well. We're going to be talking, of course, aren't we, about Bayern Munich against Borussia Dortmund, which hopefully is going to make that title race even more interesting. Have a good weekend. See you next week. Everyone. Bye.